September 26th, 2002. A day that began with hope, routine, and everyday anticipation turned into a date engraved in history as one of the deadliest maritime disasters ever recorded. More than 1,800 lives were lost in a single night. An entire generation swept into the sea without warning. This is not just a maritime catastrophe. This is the story of Le Joola, a tragedy that emerged not from nature alone, but from systemic failure of human error, governmental negligence, and tragic silence. A catastrophe whose tremors still ripple through West Africa and beyond. A wound that never fully healed in the hearts of survivors, victims' families, and a nation. And a haunting parable of lessons unlearned. Built in 1990 by the German shipbuilding company JJC's Werft, the MV Le Joola was a roll-on roll-off ferry named after the Joola people of southern Senegal. Originally commissioned to navigate the calm waters of Senegal's inland rivers, she was not designed to endure the often unpredictable nature of open sea navigation. Her legal passenger limit, 536 souls. Yet in a country yearning for unity and infrastructure, Le Joola came to symbolize far more than transport. It was viewed as a bridge between the long marginalized Casamance region and the coastal capital of Dakar. Run by the Senegalese Navy, the ferry featured modern comforts for its time. Air-conditioned passenger cabins, a VIP salon for dignitaries, and a cargo bay large enough to carry both merchandise and vehicles. It was a marvel of its kind, at least on paper. Beneath the surface, however, trouble loomed. Within years of operation, the vessel experienced serious mechanical failures. Problems with propulsion systems, faulty radar equipment, and navigation concerns piled up. In 2001, the ship was withdrawn from service for critical repairs, spending nearly a year in dock. But just weeks before the tragedy, Le Joola was hurried back into operation after minimal maintenance. Reports of unresolved mechanical issues surfaced. Crew members expressed worry, yet the ship sailed once again against the advice of its own engineers. When Le Joola departed the port of Ziguinchor in the early afternoon of September 26, 2002, she was already far beyond her capacity. As early as noon, passengers arrived in droves, hoping to secure a place on board. Tickets were sold, resold, and in some cases, given out without record. The crew watched as the decks filled beyond visibility, but no intervention came. No acquirit passenger manifest existit. Regulations were ignored. Infants and small children, often carried on laps, went uncounted. Market vendors squeezed in with crates of produce. Military personnel joined students returning to Dakar for university. Even livestock was loaded. Motorcycles, barrels of oil, and sacks of grain were lashed to any available surface. The sun deck, never meant for mass occupancy, sagged under human weight. Some estimated more than 2,000 people were aboard. The ferry's safety equipment, including life jackets and rafts, was never meant for more than a quarter of that. And still, the ship departed. The sun shone as the ferry began its voyage. Music played on battery-powered radios. Children ran between deck chairs. For many, this was a journey toward opportunity, a visit to the capital, a reunion with loved ones, a fresh academic year. Beneath the cheerful surface, danger brewed. The Le Joola left the mouth of the Casamance River and began her unauthorized foray into the Atlantic Ocean, hugging the coastline. This route, faster but more perilous, exposed the already compromised vessel to open sea conditions. With only one working engine, her maneuverability was severely limited. The overloaded top decks made her top-heavy. Passengers noted the distinct, uneasy roll of the ship, even in mild swells. As darkness approached, the ferry continued steadily northward, heading toward Dakar, but moving more slowly than expected. By 10 p.m., she neared the waters off the Gambia. The weather began to shift. Winds picked up. A light drizzle became steady rain. Many passengers retreated below deck, seeking shelter and sleep in packed, stifling cabins. Some turned to prayer, uneasy about the ship's movement. Others lay quietly, trusting the journey would end by morning. No weather bulletin had been issued, no maritime advisories. The ferry's communication systems were unreliable. No backup protocols were in place. Crew members grew anxious, but no warning was given. No contingency plan reviewed. At approximately 11 p.m., disaster struck. A sudden, violent squall common to the West African coast during the rainy season slammed into Le Joola. Gusts exceeding 70 kilometers per hour drove massive waves against the vessel's flanks. Rain poured in sheets. The sea, once calm, turned ferocious. Cargo on deck shifted. Barrels rolled, slamming into bulkheads and passengers. The upper deck, already unstable, tilted dangerously. The overloaded ship began listing sharply to port. By 11:03 p.m., the ferry was fighting for balance. Then came a colossal wave, striking the starboard side. The vessel lurched. The weight of passengers and cargo surged toward the listing edge. Screams pierced the night. People fell. Some jumped. Others held tightly to the rails, praying. The ship capsized. It happened in minutes 4, maybe 5. Lights went out. Engines failed. Le Joola rolled on her side, then flipped, trapping hundreds beneath. In the chaos, some managed to climb through shattered windows or upturned stairwells. Others drowned, caught in pitch-black corridors rapidly filling with seawater. Those who made it to the surface clung to floating debris, battered and disoriented. Few knew how to swim. There were no flares. No distress call had been sent. In the silence of night, cries echoed over the waves and then faded. For hours, the Atlantic held its secret. No Mayday had reached coastal authorities. No radar had traced the sinking. It wasn't until sunrise that nearby fishermen, venturing out in pirogues, saw the overturned hull. Floating bodies dotted the water. Survivors waved weakly from debris. Some were naked, others clung to fragments of the ship. These fishermen became first responders. With bare hands, they lifted the injured from the water, carrying them ashore in their tiny boats. Only later did government rescue teams arrive. By then, the majority had already died. Exposure, trauma, and drowning had claimed almost everyone. For days, bodies washed ashore. Morgues overflowed. Mass graves were dug. Identification was rushed or skipped altogether. Families gathered at harbors and hospitals, holding photographs, begging for news. For most, silence was the only answer. Only 64 people survived. Over 1,800 perished. More than 500 were children. In some towns, nearly all youth between ages 15 and 25 were lost. Schools closed in mourning. Entire lineages extinguished. The Casamance region plunged into despair. The grief turned to fury. In Dakar and Ziguinchor, protests erupted. Citizens demanded answers. Who allowed the ship to sail? Why were safety protocols ignored? Where was the oversight? The Senegalese government launched an official investigation. The deceased captain was quickly blamed. The inquiry confirmed overloading, mechanical faults, and negligence. Yet no top-level official accepted responsibility. No minister resigned. No one was tried in court. Compensation, when it came, was slow and inadequate. Victims' families received small payouts, insulting compared to their loss. Funerals were conducted with haste. Some bodies were never returned home. In France, where dozens of passengers held dual citizenship, legal action was taken. French courts issued international arrest warrants against Senegalese officials. The Senegalese government refused extradition, declaring the matter closed. Legal processes dragged on for nearly 2 decades, ultimately yielding no convictions. The survivors were left to cope alone. Many suffered from trauma, nightmares, and guilt. Some retreated into silence, never speaking of that night again. Others channeled their pain into advocacy, demanding reforms, recognition, and memory. The 2 decades later, the pain endures. The wreck of Le Joola lies undisturbed beneath the Atlantic waves, a tomb to hundreds whose bodies were never recovered. Many families continue to plead for its recovery, yearning for closure and a dignified burial for their lost loved ones. Memorials have been erected. In Ziguinchor, a sculpture garden bears the names of victims. In Dakar, an annual ceremony draws families, survivors, and sympathizers. On every September 26th, candles flicker against the ocean breeze. Flowers are scattered on the water. Names are read aloud. The tragedy of Le Joola became a symbol, not only of grief, but of systemic failure and a call for reform. Across West Africa, it spurred conversations about maritime safety. New regulations were introduced. Some nations overhauled their ferry inspection protocols. And yet, the memory remains fragile. In textbooks, it is barely mentioned. In global media, it is often forgotten. Survivors and families fight to preserve its story. Le Joola was more than steel and rivets. It carried students with dreams, parents with hopes, children with laughter. It was a vessel of life, and it became a coffin at sea. This is not just a documentary. It is a remembrance, a reckoning, a call to honor the dead, comfort the living, and demand that such a tragedy never be repeated.